The thing about rejection is that it's not really rejection in the eyes of God. Oftentimes, it's redirection that you didn't know you needed. Sometimes when you're crying, heaven is actually rejoicing because it was heaven's way of rerouting you and repositioning you. When you go through rejection, it kind of strips you of dependency and it positions you for dominion. If they didn't walk away, you would never have walked forward. And that's the truth. God doesn't just move your enemies. He uses them to redirect you. Rejection reveals what you were never meant to be attached to. That's what it does. I mean, this is the part that, for me, I think I've had to experience quite often. As someone in ministry, you get to deal with I don't call it rejection anymore, but initially that was how it felt to me. I used to feel like, oh my gosh, this person's rejecting me. And, God just speaking to me the way he spoke to Samuel when they said to Samuel, give us a king because your sons are not able to continue in the ways of priesthood. And God said to him, Samuel, they have not rejected you, they have rejected me. So rejection is something you get to deal with, because in Samuel having to deal with that, he then discovered that he wasn't only called to be a priest, he wasn't only called to be a judge. There was a part of him that also had the ability to anoint kings and to birth kings and to teach the people the behavior of royalty. So the thing about rejection is that it's not really rejection in the eyes of God. Oftentimes it's redirection that you didn't know you needed. So many times people cry out, you've cried about who has left you and who walked away for you. But, sometimes when you're crying, heaven is actually rejoicing because it was heaven's way of rerouting you and repositioning you in God's will. Think about the story of Lot, for example, and Abraham. It was until Lot left Abraham that God said to him, hey, Abraham, come out, look at the stars, look at this. And God began to reawaken Abraham and began to speak to Abraham about the coming season. And the name Lot literally means the one that covers. So as long as Lot was in Abraham's house, he was covering Abraham from seeing a particular aspect of the promise and the covenant. So imagine looking at Lot living as a rejection when it was God actually reawakening Abraham, to a next level of the covenant. And I found out that people of purpose often got rejected in scriptures. Think of the story of Joseph. His brothers rejected him, as far as I'm concerned. David was the same thing. They said, hey, what are you doing here? Are you trying to, act like you are, this great guy? It was the same thing that happened to Jesus. So many people, rejected him. But just because you're rejected, doesn't mean that God is done with you. The pain of these people that are often rejected, that pain wasn't a punishment from God. It was actually heaven's way of saying your destiny is so unique, it requires precision. Not everyone can journey with you. So when you go through rejection, I found out that it kind of strips you of dependency and it positions you for dominion. The times that certain people walked away from me, it forced me to find another solution. It forced me to look inward and to discover that I can do this. There are some people that the thought of them actually leaving me terrified me. But the moment they did, it dawned on me, I can't survive. The system can't survive. Everything in my life can't survive without this person. So it strips you of dependency, and it's kind of like David, his mighty men saying to him, oh, David, how could you do this? And they wanted to stone him. That was a major time of rejection for David. But Bible says David encouraged himself in the Lord. So he found a new level of the presence of God in the midst of the accusations of men. So it strips you of dependency and you start to discover strength. And that strength you discover is actually what positions you for dominion. So if they didn't walk away, you would never have walked forward. And that's the truth. So many times that I came into newer levels of destiny, it was because certain people walked away and I had to find how I could sustain my vision in the midst of their absence. And even though it didn't look like I was growing, but I was actually walking forward. So Saul rejected David. He literally wanted to kill him. But the rejection of David, with each day that Saul dwells in that emotion of rejecting David, Saul was slowly shifting away from the throne. So what people don't know is when you reject covenant destiny people, you are pulling yourself away from being part of the manifestation of that covenant. So it's not just about being rejected. You have to be careful that you're not rejecting the right people. So God doesn't just remove your enemies. Actually, I found out He uses them to redirect you. So even your enemies are not wasted. The Bible says in Psalm 18 verse 22, it says, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. If it was the builders that rejected it, who made it the cornerstone? The builders are literally the ones building. And they said, we don't want to use the stone. Who then picked it up and went and positioned it as the cornerstone? That's to tell you that there is always a much higher builder than the obvious builders. So when the obvious builders in your life reject you, call for the divine supernatural builder to position you. So as a leader that is listening to me, rejection reveals what you were never meant to be attached to. That's what it does. Use it as foil. Don't carry it around as a wound. Okay? So stop saying you're broken, because you're not broken. You're just being rebuilt. And this is part of what I'm teaching, the Reawaken to Your Purpose course. I want to show you how to turn rejection into redirection. And I hope I get to see you in class. God bless you.